Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, March 4th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 179 days, the game against Michigan in 270 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at GratefulGriddleOH.com. All right, so here's a show that I thought you were going to get yesterday, but then the NHL Stadium Series game at Ohio Stadium was really, really cool, an amazing night, and I wanted to do a show on that. So you got that show yesterday. Now you're getting the show that I thought you were going to get yesterday. It's fine. It's worth the wait. It is one of my favorite Ohio State players to talk to, Donovan Jackson. Our crew at the NFL Combine got a chance to talk to him over the weekend. The offensive line were some of the last interviews of the week. Donovan Jackson had a lot of interesting stuff to say about last season, the run to a national championship, his move to left tackle, some of the guys who are kind of coming up next on the offensive line. Some really, really interesting stuff from Donovan Jackson. So you're going to get a whole show hearing from him. There's some other really interesting interviews that we haven't gotten to yet. You might get some of those a little later on in the week. We'll see how the week goes. But let's start with Donovan Jackson. Is he grateful now, looking back, to have the experience of playing left tackle for the second half of last season?
I'm very grateful for the experience. Unfortunately, the way I got it wasn't the way I wanted to go. Obviously, I had fantastic guys that were playing the position, but we always at Ohio State we always say competitive excellence. You got to make the play and your number's called. So when my number was called to play tackle, I went into it with the best mentality I could. To say if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the best of my ability. Showing off my versatility a little bit, showing that I can play anywhere on the line. So I'm grateful for the experience.
Where did Donovan Jackson see the most benefit from his time kicking out from left guard to left tackle?
Yeah, I feel like it benefited me a lot in terms of I'll say different aspects of my game, whether it be feet, hand usage, working out in space. Because, there are other times at guard where if you're at guard, there's still going to be a DN on you. Like guys can come out in a rushman package or a sack package or anything like that. So, I think the experience helped in terms of how I viewed the game.
Having him play left tackle was obviously not plan A or even plan B for the Buckeyes this year. So how did that conversation go when Justin Fry approached him about maybe moving out to tackle before the Penn State game?
Yeah, so when Josh initially got hurt and then Zen Mahalski went in when he unfortunately got hurt as well, Coach Fry came up to me. He was like, look, man, I know we always joke because we always joked about, you're gonna have to play tackle. I was like, no, I'm not. But but when the conversation finally came, look, we need you to kick out the tackle for this big week, playing a big team. So it was a lot to think about. He weighed the pros and the cons of the decision, but at the end of the day, I just like winning more than anything else. And I felt like if me moving outside would help us win, because I think this happened around week 7, so there's still a lot of football ahead of us. So I just like winning more than anything else. So I knew that I had a lot of work to do, and I practiced against 2 amazing edge rushers every day, so I had no choice but to get better.
A little bit more of a big picture question now for Donovan Jackson. Looking back, what did it mean to Jackson to play at Ohio State?
Yeah, being a Buckeye meant everything to me. Growing up, my parents, growing up in Texas at least, my parents always asked me, are you there are 2 major teams in Texas, but my parents are nah, my mom's a huge Ohio State fan. She's like, nah, you're a Buckeye. And I was like, oh, okay, Mom. But then eventually the time came for me to make a college decision. I chose Ohio State. And, scarlet and gray means everything to me. The university, the state, the guys I played with, I bled with, sweated with, cried with. It means everything. It's so deep in my heart, deep ingrained in my heart, that my time at Ohio State was a huge development factor in who I am today.
All right, so here's one of the more interesting questions that we got for a bunch of these guys during the course of the week at the NFL Combine. It's about who's up next at their positions.
Yeah, so the guys haven't seen. Obviously, Luke balled out in the playoffs. I just know he's going to continue it throughout the season. Carson stepped in when we had other injuries and, didn't miss a beat. Tegra had a great first year, and I know he's just going to continue to grow. But guys we haven't seen, I think Josh Fryar is going to be really good. Josh Fryar, Ian Moore. Ian Moore's a guy who, near the end of his freshman year, started to figure it out, and you can see him starting to figure it out throughout practice. I feel like he's going to have a really good career at Ohio State.
This was a great question from our buddy Tony Gerdeman. Was Donovan Jackson sort of surprised that the 3-guard rotation worked in the playoff? Now, I will raise my hand and say, when they announced that they were going to do a 3-guard rotation the week of the Tennessee game, it was that seems like that's probably a bad idea. And Donovan will hit Tony with a little bit of a power pause here. If you're listening and you're not watching, you can basically see the wheels spinning because he's not sure exactly how honest he's going to be for a second about his thoughts on the 3-guard rotation and whether he was surprised it worked.
No. I wasn't surprised. I knew what all those guys are capable of. I think when I realized that, oh my gosh, this is really going to work for sure. Like when we first introduced the guard rotation, like guys coming in and out in practice, I was like, oh, I don't know. Like the guys got to get a rhythm here. But when we were playing Tennessee and like I was playing next to Saraveld, I was playing next to Luke, and both those guys were just balling. I was like, man, this is a great idea. Like, I believed in this from the start. But yeah, I mean, like all those guys that rotated in to help us win obviously the big one at the end. They had played an amazing job playing top-notch football.
Why did it work?
Why did it work? Because especially speaking as offensive line, we just played with a chip on our shoulder. Every game we just remembered where we were at the end of the season, and every game we just kept reminding ourselves what people said about us. You know, I believe when we were announced for the playoffs, people were like, oh man, that Tennessee front's going to run through Ohio State's offensive line. And so that and then other people were saying, man, I really hope they don't have a home game in the shoe because they're going to boo the Buckeyes out of there. So just those clips were just running through our head, just cycling through and through to the point where just we knew we had to play better.
Mentioned earlier that Donovan Jackson's first game at left tackle was against Penn State. Now that's a tough opponent on the road, tough environment. So that's already a pretty big challenge. Not to mention the fact that Abdul Carter was lined up across from him for a whole bunch of that game. So what was it like getting thrown in at left tackle against Abdul Carter in his first game as a left tackle?
Yeah, I mean, I look back on it and see how much I've grown from then. You know, I had a 4 days notice to learn how to play tackle. So, I know just seeing how I set, seeing how I did everything then to now, I sometimes look back on it and see just kind of appreciate how much I've grown and just renew myself of there's still so much to do. Yeah, it was huge for us, obviously, as a team to win that game. Obviously, a great opponent that we went against, but it was big for the offensive line, especially down the stretch in the fourth quarter with our heels essentially in their end zone to drive the ball out and try to run the clock out to win the game.
One of the most memorable moments of the season, of course, was the scoop and score by Jack Sawyer in the Cotton Bowl against Texas. So what was Donovan Jackson thinking? What was going through his mind during that play?
Yeah, I initially didn't know what was going on. We were on the sideline preparing to, run a quick 4-minute drill. So Coach Fryar was, drawing up plays and trying to talk us through some of the looks. And we just hear the crowd go crazy. I look up and Jack Sawyer's running down the sideline, and I was like, no way! We were all freaking out. Jack Sawyer is one of those guys where, kind of cemented himself in Ohio State history, and that couldn't have happened to any better guy. He kind of ran the show, especially in the playoffs, of making sure everyone's on the same page before the season, calling everybody, making sure we all, get on board if we're coming back. So, it couldn't have happened to a much better guy. Captain Jack Sawyer.
And finally, a question for Donovan Jackson about Seth McLaughlin. Now, Seth McLaughlin is coming back from an Achilles injury, of course, and the good news is it sounds like he will be good to go for training camp wherever he gets drafted by an NFL team. So what would Donovan Jackson tell NFL teams about Seth McLaughlin?
Seth McLaughlin's a field general. We wouldn't have started the way we did without Seth McLaughlin, I'll tell you that. There were many times, many looks where he would check it like mid-cadence when Will's mid-cadence. He no, we're going over here now. And then they would bring a rifle or blitz to where he checked it, and we would pick it up. So Seth knows what's going on all the time. And he's a guy who's organization will be lucky to have, because I know that our success, even when he unfortunately did get hurt around week 10, he was still in the building. He was, he didn't go outside to outside practices because it was cold as ice, but when he was always in the meeting rooms, he was always in the indoor practice field, making sure everyone's on the same page, making sure we all had that same mentality coming into games. And I feel like we wouldn't have been where we are now without Seth McLaughlin.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, but I'm guessing people are probably pretty interested in some of the look back at the run to the national championship and, of course, the look ahead to the 2025 Buckeyes as well. So we'll try maybe get you one more of these shows looking back at some of those interviews from the NFL Combine, because there's still some really interesting stuff we haven't gotten a chance to get to yet. So get you one of those later this week. But we've got some other stuff coming up this week as well. Probably, hopefully, maybe some interviews with Ohio State assistant coaches before everyone heads off for spring break. And then, of course, spring ball will start in just a couple of weeks. We're going to have a busy month. A lot of stuff to talk about, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Basketball team has its final home game of the season Tuesday night against Nebraska. There is a lot to talk about there at BuckeyeHuddle.com and, of course, at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.